the rhetorics.
Yeah.
Today we're diving into a topic that's been causing quite a stir.
Yeah.
The question of an independent southeast Igbo Biafra region in Nigeria.
Okay.
We're going to be looking
Okay.
at the arguments laid out
Mm-hmm.
by Uche Mefor,
Mm-hmm.
the convener of the Igbo Biafra nationalists
Yeah.
and the indigenous people of Igbo Nation
Right.
for self-determination.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complex issue.
Yeah, a lot to unpack, for sure.
Why part?
So one of the things that really struck me
Okay.
is that this isn't just some abstract political debate.
Right.
This push for an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra, it comes from a very real sense of injustice.
Okay.
Mefor argues that Nigeria's insistence on territorial integrity is basically a shield
Okay.
to cover up ongoing human rights violations
Okay.
and the marginalization of the Igbo Biafra people.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hold on a sec.
Mhm.
That's a pretty heavy accusation to throw around.
It is.
What kind of evidence are we talking about here to back that up?
The historical record is pretty damning.
Okay.
We're talking about decades of documented violence and discrimination against the Igbo population.
Yeah.
Starting with the pogroms back in the 1960s.
Okay.
Then the brutal Biafran War
Right.
with its deliberate starvation tactics.
Yeah.
And even today, you have reports of military crackdowns on peaceful protests in the southeast Igbo Biafra region.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
We're talking about a long history of violence.
a long and troubling history.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you give me some specific examples to
Yeah.
illustrate the gravity of what happened?
One incredibly stark example is the Asaba massacre
Okay.
back in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
Nigerian troops systematically executed
Wow.
hundreds, possibly even thousands of Igbo men and boys. It's considered one of the most horrific events of the Biafran War.
Right.
And even now, you have groups like Amnesty International reporting on extrajudicial killings and arbitrary detentions of pro-Biafra activists.
Okay.
So it's a pattern
It's a pattern.
of behavior that's really hard to ignore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So essentially what Mefor is saying is that all of these actions,
Yeah.
both past and present,
Right.
could potentially
It could even.
crimes against humanity under international law.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the argument.
And it begs the question, why hasn't Nigeria stepped in
Right.
to protect the Southeast Igbo Biafra population and address these grievances?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a pretty basic thing.
Mefor's argument is that they haven't just failed to protect them.
Right.
They've actively blocked any attempts at dialogue.
Or finding a real solution.
Okay, so we've got this history
Yeah.
of violence, this sense of being ignored and silenced by those in power.
Yeah.
Where does the idea of remedial secession come into play?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Mefor's argument is that because there's been no real attempt at internal resolution and because things are so dire for the Igbo Biafra people, the idea of remedial secession becomes not just a desire, but a necessity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll admit I'm not entirely sure what that means.
Okay.
Break it down for
So
us.
think of it like this. Imagine a relationship
Okay.
that's just become toxic,
Okay.
no matter how much you try to fix things.
Right.
Sometimes the only healthy option is to separate. That's essentially what remedial secession is.
Okay.
It's the right of a group to break away from a state.
That's either unable or unwilling to protect its people's basic rights.
Okay.
It's a last resort when all else has failed.
So in essence, what Mefor is arguing is that the Southeast Igbo Biafra people have reached that point, that last resort option.
That's the core argument.
Okay.
And to back this up, they draw comparisons to other cases where remedial secession has been recognized, places like Kosovo and South Sudan.
Oh, yeah.
They're saying, like, this isn't some crazy new idea. There's precedent for this.
That's a pretty powerful point.
It is.
But I imagine there's got to be another side to this story, too. What are some concerns people have raised?
Yeah, one major concern is whether the southeast Igbo Biafra region can actually survive on its own, economically.
Right.
Opponents point out They have less oil revenue compared to other parts of Nigeria, and they worry about the challenges of being landlocked, potentially being cut off from easy trade routes.
Yeah, those are pretty big hurdles
They are.
to overcome.
For sure.
What do proponents of independence say to that?
They argue that the Southeast Igbo Biafra is more than just oil. They highlight the incredibly diverse economy they already have with things like the manufacturing powerhouse in Nui, which is known for vehicle parts, and the massive commercial hub in Aba. They say, we're not starting from scratch. We have strengths to build on.
So they're pushing back on this idea of economic vulnerability, saying they're more self-reliant than people think. What about being landlocked? How do they...
To address that, they propose developing ports in Abia and Imo states, which have coastlines. This wouldn't just open them up to international trade. It could potentially turn those areas into booming economic centers, attracting investment, creating jobs.
It's a bold vision.
It is.
But I can see how it would address a major concern. What about the role of the Igbo diaspora in all of this?
That's another key part of their argument. They see the Igbo diaspora, which is known for its entrepreneurial spirit and success all over the world, as a major asset. They believe that they can bring in investments, send money back home, remittances, and offer expertise to help build up the Southeast Igbo Biafra.
So it's a collective effort.
Exactly.
It's not just about...
It's a partnership.
It's in region itself.
A shared responsibility to create a prosperous future for the Southeast Igbo Biafra.
But let's face it. Economics is only one piece of the puzzle here. What about the potential for conflict? I mean, wouldn't a move towards independence risk igniting ethnic tensions?
It's a fear a lot of people have. Opponents
worry about tensions flaring up, not just within the Southeast Igbo Biafra region itself, where you have different ethnic groups, but also in Nigeria as a whole. They worry that if the Southeast Igbo Biafra breaks away, it could set off a chain reaction with other groups demanding independence and potentially leading to chaos.
So that's a major concern.
It's a valid concern.
How do those groups pushing for an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra
their argument is
respond to that fear?
That an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra wouldn't just be for the Igbo people. It would be a place that embraces everyone. They envision a constitution that protects minority rights, that guarantees representation for all groups, and builds on the Igbo tradition of consensus building and communal harmony.
So they're trying to reassure people. That's the message they're sending.
That this wouldn't just be an exclusionary state.
But it's not just words. They point to Igbo cultural values of community and cooperation, arguing that these values would be at the heart of their new nation.
But even if people buy into this vision of inclusivity, wouldn't opponents still question their ability?
You hit the nail on the head.
To actually govern effectively.
That's a big challenge they have to address head on.
What's the game plan for building a government that actually works?
They make a couple of interesting points. First, they emphasize the historical tradition of decentralized governance in Igbo culture. It's a system where decisions are made at the local level with a strong emphasis on accountability to the community.
So they're drawing on their cultural foundation.
That's the idea.
So they believe that that could be modernized.
They believe this tradition can be adapted to create a truly transparent and accountable government in an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra.
But it's not just about relying on those cultural values.
They're not naive. They also recognize the need to learn from others. They say they can draw on the expertise of the Igbo diaspora, who have experience working in well-functioning systems all over the world.
So
plus, they can look to successful models in other countries, potentially adapting those models.
So it's a mix of heritage, international best practices.
It's a blend of approaches.
But we've got to talk about the elephant in the room here.
Got it.
International recognition.
That's arguably the biggest hurdle they face.
It's one thing to declare independence. But it's a whole other thing to get other countries to recognize you as a legitimate state.
And Monfort acknowledges this. They know they're likely to encounter resistance from Nigeria, which would see this as a threat to its power and territorial integrity.
Okay.
And internationally, there's always a concern about setting a precedent for other secessionist movements.
Right.
So it's
an uphill battle.
It's a tough road ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do they plan on overcoming that?
Their approach centers on two key things.
Okay.
Diplomacy and economic incentives.
Okay.
They believe in engaging directly with both Nigeria and other key players on the world stage.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit.
Okay.
What would that diplomacy?
It would mean going on a diplomatic offensive,
Okay.
addressing those fears head on, reassuring everyone that an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra would be committed to peace and stability in the region, guaranteeing the rights of all its citizens and becoming a reliable partner on the world stage.
Okay.
Basically saying...
So they're trying to sell themselves as a responsible member.
We're not here to cause trouble. We want to be a force for good.
Of the global community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And along with that diplomacy, they emphasize the economic benefits of recognizing an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra.
Right.
They talk about the potential for trade, access to resources, a stable business environment.
Right.
They're basically saying, this isn't just about politics.
Okay.
It's about creating a win-win situation for everyone.
So they're making a business case for independence.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. I'm sure opponents would still have their doubts. But what about the idea that secession would actually weaken Nigeria as a whole?
That's the million-dollar question, and it sparks a lot of debate. Supporters of an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra offer a pretty interesting counter-argument. They suggest that this idea of a unified Nigeria is actually more of an illusion than a reality.
Okay.
They point to the deep ethnic, religious, and regional divisions that have plagued the country for decades.
Okay.
They argue that forcing everyone to stay together might actually be more destabilizing in the long run.
So are they implying that true unity comes from recognizing differences and allowing for...
And allowing for greater autonomy.
Yeah, a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah.
That maybe separation,
yeah,
while painful,
that's the essence of their argument.
Could lead to a more stable...
They believe that a peaceful and negotiated separation could be the best path forward.
Okay.
Both for the Southeast Igbo Biafra and for the remaining regions of Nigeria.
It's definitely a thought-provoking perspective.
It is.
It challenges conventional wisdom.
It certainly does.
About national unity at all costs.
And it raises a whole bunch of questions about the future of Nigeria.
We've only just scratched the surface here.
Right.
There's so much more to unpack.
Absolutely.
We're going to continue this discussion in part 2 of our exploration.
Sounds good.
Of the viability of an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So picking up where we left off.
Okay.
Let's dig a bit deeper into the economic arguments around an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra region.
Yep.
We touched on their counterpoints to the oil revenue and landlocked geography concerns.
Yeah.
But let's really unpack those.
Yeah, it seemed like they were really banking on diversifying their economy beyond oil, making the most of that coastal access and tapping into the power of the Igbo diaspora.
Exactly. Mipar Haifor highlights existing industries as proof of a diverse economy, especially the manufacturing hub in Nui and the commercial center in Aban.
They're already major players and could potentially explode with the right policies and investment.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're not starting from zero here.
Right.
We've got a solid base to build on.
And about being landlocked.
Right.
Their vision is to develop ports in Abia and Emo, the states, with coastlines.
Right.
This wouldn't just open up trade routes.
Right.
It could transform those areas into economic powerhouses, drawing in foreign investment, creating tons of jobs.
Ambitious, for sure.
It is.
But I get the logic, turning a perceived weakness into a strength.
Classic move.
Yeah.
And then there's the potential impact of the Igbo diaspora.
Yeah.
Miafor paints this picture of a globally successful community with deep ties to their homeland. The idea is to leverage their financial resources, business savvy, and international networks,
to drive development in an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra.
So it's a collective effort, the diaspora playing a key role in building a new nation.
Exactly.
That's a powerful idea.
They see it as a partnership.
Okay.
A shared responsibility to create a prosperous future for the Southeast Igbo Biafra.
Okay, economics aside.
Sure.
Let's talk about the challenges of actually governing an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra.
Okay.
Critics bring up concerns about replicating Nigeria's corruption and weak institutions.
Right.
What's the counter-argument to that?
Here's where the argument gets into culture and history.
Okay.
Mayfair emphasizes the tradition of decentralized, community-based governance in Igbo culture.
Right.
It's a system where decisions are made at the grassroots level with a focus on consensus and accountability to the people.
So they're saying this cultural foundation could prevent the pitfalls
That's the idea.
of centralized power.
They believe this tradition can be modernized to create a truly transparent and accountable government in an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra.
Okay.
But they're not relying solely on cultural values. They're looking outward for inspiration and support too.
Okay.
They say they can learn from successful governance models in other countries, adapting them to their own context.
So it's a mix of heritage, international best practices.
It's a blend of approaches. And let's not forget about the existing structures within the Southeast Igbo Biafra region. They already have state governments, local councils, and traditional institutions. Meffer's argument is that these can be reformed and strengthened, paving the way for a smoother transition.
So it's not a blank slate.
Exactly.
They have a foundation.
They have a foundation to work with.
To work with. With careful planning, strategic reforms, and a commitment to transparency. They believe they can create a system that truly serves the people and avoids the mistakes of the past.
Okay, time to address the elephant in the room.
You're right.
International recognition.
It's a massive hurdle.
Yeah.
And Miafor acknowledges that. They know they're likely to encounter pushback from Nigeria and other countries. Secessionist movements are often met with resistance. And there are always concerns about setting precedents and destabilizing regions. So it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. How do they propose to overcome this?
The approach outlined in his writings focuses on two main strategies, diplomacy and economic incentives. Proactive engagement with Nigeria and other major international players is key.
Okay. Break that down for me. What would that diplomacy look like? It involves directly addressing concerns about peace, stability, and cooperation. It means emphasizing their commitment to peaceful coexistence with Nigeria and the surrounding regions, guaranteeing the rights of minorities in the Southeast, Igbo Biafra, and making sure they don't become a haven for instability or conflict.
So reassuring everyone that an independent Southeast, Igbo Biafra, would be a responsible player on the global stage.
And alongside diplomacy, they highlight the economic perks of engaging with an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra, trade opportunities, access to resources, a stable business environment.
So they're making a business case for independence, showing that it could be mutually beneficial.
They believe that demonstrating their economic potential and commitment to good governance can win over skeptics and build strong international relationships.
Okay, we've covered a lot, but there's one more argument from opponents that we need to tackle. This idea that an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra would actually weaken Nigeria overall. What about the loss of territory, the economic hit? How do they respond to that?
It's a complex argument. And Meffor presents a pretty nuanced counterpoint. He suggests that Nigeria's current unity is more of an illusion Deep ethnic, religious, and regional divisions have fueled conflict for decades, forcing the Southeast Igbo Biafra to stay within a system that ignores their grievances, might actually worsen these divisions and create even more instability down the line.
So they're saying true unity sometimes means acknowledging differences and allowing for more autonomy.
That's the gist. They believe a peaceful and negotiated separation could be the best route to stability and prosperity for both the Southeast Igbo Biafra and the rest of Nigeria, allowing each entity to focus on its own needs and development, potentially leading to more genuine cooperation later on.
It's a thought-provoking perspective.
It definitely does.
It challenges this idea of national unity at all costs.
And it raises a ton of questions about the future of Nigeria and the region as a whole.
We've done some serious unpacking in this part of our discussion.
We have.
But there's still more to explore.
Absolutely.
Join us for part 3.
Okay.
As we delve into historical precedents for secession, the potential challenges of transitioning to independence, and the broader implications of the Southeast Igbo Biafra's quest for self-determination. All right, so in this final part of our exploration, we're going to zoom out a bit and look at the Southeast Igbo Biafra's bid for independence in a broader historical and international context. We've talked economics, we've talked politics, but what about historical precedents?
Absolutely.
Have there been other situations where regions have successfully broken away?
Yeah. And Memphor draws heavily on these examples to strengthen his case. He points specifically to cases like Kosovo and South Sudan, where this idea of remedial secession driven by claims of oppression and the failure of the existing state to protect its people was ultimately recognized by the international community.
So these aren't just random examples plucked out of thin air. They're carefully chosen.
They are.
To show that.
Yeah, he highlights specific aspects of those cases that he believes are directly relevant to the Southeast Igbo Biafra's situation. Things like the scale of human rights abuses, the complete lack of internal solutions, and this desperate need for self-preservation. He's making a case that their situation isn't unique, that there's a clear pattern here.
It's like he's building this legal and moral argument, showing that
this quest for independence
isn't something outlandish or unprecedented.
It fits within an existing framework.
It fits within an existing framework.
Yeah, exactly.
But even with these precedents in place, I imagine actually transitioning to independence is a massive undertaking.
Oh, absolutely.
What are some of the potential challenges?
It's not just about declaring independence and calling it a day. It's about building a functional state from the ground up. And that comes with a whole host of challenges. Memphor acknowledges these challenges head on and offers some potential solutions.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are some of the biggest hurdles?
One of the most fundamental challenges is establishing clear borders that are recognized internationally, especially since you're likely to have some areas that are disputed or have mixed populations. Memphor proposes a phased approach, starting with a period of autonomy within Nigeria to negotiate these boundaries peacefully and fairly.
So a gradual negotiated transition rather than a sudden and potentially chaotic break.
They see this as crucial for smooth transition.
And then there's the enormous task of creating credible and effective institutions. Everything from a court system and a police force to a central bank and regulatory bodies. Essentially building an entire government.
Essentially, from scratch. It's literally building a country from the ground up. It is.
It's a daunting prospect.
But they believe that by drawing on the expertise of the Igbo diaspora, learning from other countries that have gone through similar processes and reforming existing institutions within the Southeast Igbo Biafra, they can create a system that works for them.
Again, it's this multi-pronged approach. combining internal resources with external support and best practices from around the world. But even with all of that, can we talk about economic stability?
You're absolutely right.
That's another major challenge.
Wouldn't they need to hit the ground running to ensure a functioning economy, manage their resources responsibly, and establish trade relationships quickly?
And that's where their focus on developing their coastal areas and tapping into the diaspora's economic power comes in.
He touched on that earlier. Those are key parts of their strategy.
Along with diversifying their industries, attracting foreign investment, and potentially joining regional trade blocs like the ECOWAS. They're thinking long-term, aiming to build
that's the goal.
A sustainable economic foundation.
It's not just about survival. It's about thriving.
Okay, so we talked about the challenges. What about the opportunities?
So what's the upside here?
For the Southeast, Igbo Biafra. What's the vision?
So for those who support independence, the potential upside is enormous. They envision a future where the Southeast, Igbo Biafra, is in control of its own destiny, free from what they see as the corruption and marginalization of the Nigerian state. They believe that by harnessing their own resources, their entrepreneurial spirit, and the incredible talents of their people, they can create a truly prosperous and equitable society.
So it's not just about independence as an end in itself.
It's about building a better future for themselves and generations to come.
It's about self-determination.
Yeah, it's about self-determination.
Or just in a political sense?
Not just in a political sense.
But in an economic and social sense as well.
It's about taking control of their own narrative and shaping their own future.
It's a powerful and compelling vision.
It is.
But it's also important to acknowledge that not everyone buys into this.
Of course.
There are people, both within Nigeria and internationally, who have strong reservations.
There are opposing viewpoints, and the path to independence, even if it were to happen, would be incredibly complex and fraught with challenges. It's a decision with huge implications for everyone involved.
Well, I think we've done a pretty thorough job.
I think so.
Unpacking this complex issue, exploring the arguments for and against, the potential challenges and opportunities, and the historical and international context. As we wrap up our exploration, what's the main takeaway?
I think the most important takeaway is that this isn't a simple issue with easy answers. There's no black and white here. It's a deeply nuanced debate with strong passions on both sides. The quest for an independent Southeast Igbo Biafra is fueled by historical grievances, claims of systemic injustice, and a deep-seated desire for self-determination. But it also comes with significant risks and potential downsides. It's crucial to engage with these arguments thoughtfully, to understand the historical context, and to really consider the potential consequences for everyone involved.
Well said. And as Uche Mmefor's arguments remind us, this debate ultimately boils down to some fundamental questions about human rights, self-determination, and the responsibility of a state to protect its people. These are questions that resonate far beyond the borders of Nigeria. And have implications for how we think about nationhood, identity, and the pursuit of a just and equitable world. Thank you for joining us on The Rhetorics as we explored this complex and vital issue.
It's been a pleasure.